Hey everyone, I'm Mr. Willis, and this is your Macro Minute on the Spending Multiplier. The Spending Multiplier is a simplified way to calculate the potential change in real GDP output when government uses spending policy. The Spending Multiplier can be found by dividing 1 by the marginal propensity to save. And don't forget this quick tip. When dividing 1 by the MPS, flip the fraction. The MPS is expressed as a decimal or percentage, which can also be converted into a fraction. Simply flip the fraction upside down, and you'll have your spending multiplier. The spending multiplier can be used several ways. You can simply take the size of the initial change in government spending and multiply it by the spending multiplier to determine the full potential change in real GDP output that can occur. For example, if the spending multiplier is 5 and government increases its spending by $20 billion, we can determine that real GDP output could potentially increase by as much as $100 billion as a result of the fiscal policy. If the spending multiplier is 2 and government decreases its spending by $75 billion, we can determine that real GDP output could potentially decrease by as much as $150 billion as a result of the fiscal policy. You can also take the total change in real GDP output that has occurred as a result of spending policy and divide it by the spending multiplier to determine the size of the initial spending policy used by government. For example, if the spending multiplier is 2 and real GDP output has decreased by $200 billion, we can determine that a $100 billion decrease in government spending initiated that change in real GDP output. If the spending multiplier is 2.5 and real GDP output has increased by $500 billion, we can determine that a $200 billion increase in government spending initiated that change in real GDP output. And hey, if you're not given the spending multiplier, no worries. Just take the change in real GDP output and divide it by the initial change in government spending to find it. For example, if real GDP output is increased by $80 billion, and that was initiated by a $20 billion increase in government spending, then we can determine that the spending multiplier is 4. If real GDP output has decreased by $500 billion, and that was initiated by a $50 billion decrease in government spending, then we can determine that the spending multiplier is 10. Thank you so much for watching. That's the spending multiplier, and this has been your Macro Minute.